a synopsis of some of the things that I've experienced since the time I was born up until the present time. And some things, I guess it might be about the family from the beginning, I guess. Some of the things I remember, let's put it that way. It might not all fit together, but it's bits and pieces, put it that way. My first president, I was born 4/15/1930. My first president, as you know, was who?
Herbert Hoover.
Herbert Hoover.
Oh, God.
During that time, mail was delivered twice daily. There were trolley cars on 125th Street, which where we used to live in Harlem. Not on but we used to live in Harlem, and I remember them being on 125th Street. Also, when we were in Brooklyn, they were on Putnam Avenue, trolley cars. As I said, there was a 2-day mail delivery. Stamps were 2 cents.
2 cents. Wow.
There were horse-drawn milk wagons. The New York Daily News, as we all remember, was 2 cents.
Wow.
The New York Daily Mirror was 2 cents. We also had the New York Herald Tribune, the New York World Telegram, the New York Journal American, the New York Post, the New York Amsterdam News, the People's Voice, which was another African American newspaper, and the Sun, which turned into the World Telegram and Sun. Movies at that time were 10 and 15 cents for kids. There were double features, and they had chapters weekly, like Buck Rogers, etc. Kind of thing. And we went to see things like Hopalong Cassidy and Tom Mix, and The Lone Ranger, and Buck Jones, and Tarzan, Frankenstein, Charlie Chan, and there was a war movie called The Fighting 69, Dracula. The radio shows were The Shadow. This was our main source of entertainment. You guys had television. We had radio, and we had to imagine everything. So we had to imagine what was going on. And Hoofbeats they just had a drum, something like a drum. They beat to facilitate hoofbeats. The Green Hornet, Gangbusters, Boston Blackie. You might have heard of some of these things. I don't know if you have.
Nope. Not born yet.
Our radio disc jockeys were a guy named Symphony Sid. We used to come home from school at 3 o'clock and listen to Jumpin' with Symphony Sid. He was a disc jockey from Woodside, Long Island, WWRL in Woodside, Long Island. And he used to play a lot of rhythm and blues, as they called it. And the other guy was Robin's Nest, with Fred Robbins on radio station WOV in New Jersey. Symphony Sid started with rock and roll, but then again he graduated to jazz, and that's where we started listening to jazz a lot. The things we used to buy in the candy store was Pepsi was 5 cents. There was a Mission soda, was 10 cents, and there was a big soda that was cheap. They called the Big Jitney. That was 5 cents. They had the Ices Man, the shaved ices, for 2 cents and 5 cents. Ice cream cones were 10 cents. A malted milk at that time was 15 cents, and sundaes were 15 cents. My mother used to give me 15 cents every Sunday if I went to church, and after church she'd give me 15 cents to go down to the candy store, the soda fountain, and get an ice cream sundae for myself. That was a special treat for me. And Frank's were 10 cents. A burger was 15 cents. Bread was 10 and 15 cents for 10-cent loaf and a 15-cent loaf. And the brands were Bond bread and Silver Cup.
Mm-hmm.
The Subway was 5 cents. And the Ebbetsfield bleacher seats were 15 cents and 25 cents. We used to go to Coney Island. They had the Cyclone then, and the Wonder Wheel. They had Steeplechase Park. They had Luna Park, which was a big park that burned down. It was a big amusement park. Of course, they had Nathan's, which I used to love their hot dogs and pineapple drink. Minorities used to hang out in a certain bay. It was Bay 9. That's where we used to hang out. Me and my friends from the block from Hancock Street. That's where we were when we first heard the news in 1950 that North Korea had invaded South Korea. Little knowing that we'd be involved in that war at some point, which we were. Miscellaneous. We had neighborhood merry-go-round trucks that were hand-powered. I don't know if you've ever seen them. You ever seen that, Tony? Okay. They were hand-powered. Now, that guy used to come around with a merry-go-round, and he'd park, and he'd crank the merry-go-round around. We used to go sledding in Central Park at 110th Street. There was a place there that had a little hill that we used to come down. There was a PAL Play Street in Harlem at 112th Street. I used to go to the RKO Regent on 116th Street and 7th Avenue, which is now where the Muslim temple is. That's the Muslim temple. I used to go to the Lowe's 116th Street. We used to have to use, we didn't have refrigerators, we had ice boxes. And we used to have to change the pan under the ice box regularly so it wouldn't leak.
Overflowing.
Yeah. We had coal deliveries for furnace, and we had a dumbwaiter for garbage pickup. For recreation, we used to play stickball on the street and Chinese handball. You remember that, Tony?
Yep. And box too.
Yes. The schools attended. I attended PS 170 in Harlem, 111th Street. This is before we moved to Brooklyn. PS 170 on 111th Street in Harlem. Before my mother moved me to St. Thomas the Apostle on 118th Street and St. Nicholas Avenue, which is no longer there, where I had my communion and first communion and confirmation. Then we moved to Brooklyn, where I attended St. Peter Claver in Bedford-Stuyvesant. And we moved again. We were always moving. So I attended Holy Rosary in Bedford-Stuyvesant. And it was at Holy Rosary where I met a girl, and I kissed a girl for the first time. And then I went to Our Lady of Good Counsel on Putnam Avenue in Bed-Stuy. Graduated from Our Lady of Good Counsel and went to Boys High School in Brooklyn and got on the track team. That got me a scholarship to Allen University in Columbia, South Carolina. I did 3 years, before that. I did 2 years at Allen University, and I left after my sophomore year to join the Navy because I was being drafted. And I wanted the Navy rather than the Marines, which is where they were going to send me. So I did 4 years in the Navy, and then I came back and came back to New York and I started doing menial jobs. And I had Steve then. We had Steve then. And by the way, in the meantime, I had married Eunice. I forgot to. Excuse me, it all goes together. But I married Eunice, and she had graduated. So we moved down to Columbia, South Carolina. I mean to Beaufort, South Carolina, where I taught 3 years physical education and general science. And I decided that $3,000 a year wasn't going to cut it. So I had to move, and they wanted me to coach basketball and drive the school bus in the mornings also. So that wasn't cutting it. So we moved back to New York. I got a substitute teacher's license in the Board of Education. But I didn't teach in New York. I did some sub work at one time, but I found out that the New York City Youth Board was hiring guys to work with young people on the streets, street gang workers, and that's what I did. I did that for several years. In the meantime, going back and forth, my music was Lionel Hampton. Me and my buddies used to like Lionel Hampton, Dizzy, Monk, Thelonious Monk,
Yes.
Charlie Parker, Errol Garner, Illinois Jacket, Lester Young, George Shearing, Stan Kenton, Woody Herman, Count Basie, Nat Cole, Billy Eckstein, Sarah Vaughan, and Stan Getz. These were all the people that we used to listen to as teenagers.
Right.
We once lived at 120. This is a mishmash, so not everything is in order. We used to live at 128 West 112th Street in Manhattan. We also lived at 240 Madison Street in Brooklyn, 324A Decatur Street, which was a house my father rented. Then we moved to 719 Hancock Street, which is where we lived when I joined the Navy. Then my mother moved to Fenimore Street in Brooklyn. When we were in South Carolina, we lived at Route 1, Box 152, Beaufort, South Carolina. And my mother-in-law lived at 10 Nelson Street, Greenville, South Carolina. I think Steve remembers there.
Yes, I've pictured the photographs in front of that house.
Okay. As I said, I joined the U.S. Navy in 1951 and was stationed aboard the USS Coral Sea. I married Eunice James August 20th, 1953. Eunice was deceased on December 21st, 1995. And on March 16th, 1997, I married Robert T. Fahey Smith.
Hold it, when was Kathy born?
I know, right? When did I come in?
Kathy Who?
When was the star born?
It's a mishmash.
It's a mishmash.
You didn't include me
I
in
didn't
your
even
story?
I didn't even mention Steve, did I?
Yeah. He came afterwards, so
I kind of was.
Steve, Kathy was born.
And
Kathy,
people call me Cat, by the way.
I was
Nobody calls
wondering
me
if she was ever
No
born.
one calls me Cat anymore, they call me
It's
Cat.
cat.
Oh,
Cat.
here it goes.
she was born in Beaufort, South Carolina, on November,
December.
December 6th. December 6th. I always get yours and his mixed up because they're so close
Hey,
together.
he's 95, give him a break.
I know.
When Kathy was being born, Eunice and I were dancing in the house.
That's why I like to dance.
In the house.
In the house, and all of a sudden she said, "I think I'm gonna have to go." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I think it's time to go to the hospital." I said, "Oh, okay." And I didn't own a car, so I had to run to the neighbor's house and say I had to borrow his car.
Get the horse and
Okay.
buggy.
So he said, "Okay." So I grabbed Eunice and we went we got in the car, drove her across this bridge. This was a wooden bridge. a rickety bridge, you know, it was a drawbridge. You know, it was open-
Rickety drawbridge.
it was
Oh,
across,
God.
and it was across into Beaufort, because we lived on Ladies Island, and we had to cross into Beaufort and to the hospital. And by the time we got to the hospital, the doctor was there. He was, I forget his name. He's a good doctor too. And he looked up and saw her. He says, "What the hell are you doing here?" He says, I said, "I think it's time, doctor." He says, "Okay." Dr. Kaiserling, that was his name, Kaiserling.
I can't believe you remember that.
I know.
Yeah.
That's
And
amazing.
so he says, "Okay." So we rolled her in there, and 15 minutes later, pow!
So wait a minute.
That cat was out of the
I
bag.
want to know one question about that situation. Was it a segregated hospital?
Yeah.
It was a segregated hospital. Yeah.
And so the doctor,
I think it's Mather Hospital, if I'm not mistaken.
did the doctor, was the doctor a minority?
The doctor was not a minority.
But he was willing to treat
Yes,
someone
I know,
black.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Mather was
Well, you have to
Georgia.
ask, because look where you were.
Yeah.
Right.
He was a good doctor.
Okay.
That's what he's thinking of.
Yeah.
Poor Jeff.
Yeah. So not okay. So anyway, she was born there that day, that night. Well, 15 minutes after we got there, so it was an easy birth, you know.
Yeah.
Easy bird, for
Yeah.
sure, 15 minutes, woo.
So anyway,
In and out.
that's most of the
So I'm not
story.
staying here any
That's
longer.
most of the story. Some of the things I left out, these are just incidental. During that time, I came up in the era of, you had to crank up the cars in order to get them to go.
Really? That's
Wow.
in the car where they
Yeah.
did that?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, the new thing was you could step on a button on the floor and it would start the car. You know, that was another thing. And all the cars were straight shift. I remember the Packard automobile. I remember the LaSalle automobile. These were in the class of like Cadillacs, I think. I remember the things that we used to use for washing, dishwashing and clothing detergents. Super Suds, Rinso, Fells Naphtha, Kirkman, Oxydol, Duz,
Ivory's no.
Gold Dust, and you could get Chiclets gum out of a gum machine in the subway.
Yeah.
Anybody remember that?
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
that.
I remember
They
that.
had stuck the machines in the
Turn it
subway.
around.
Yeah.
And they came out, you put the money in, it came out
Yeah.
of the machine.
Yeah, I remember that.
Old Gold cigarettes, 20 grand, which is the kind my father used to send me for. I remember them selling loose cigarettes, which was what my father used to send me for.
Lucy's.
Yeah,
They sell loose eggs now.
yeah.
It's
He
true.
used, he used to,
Bodegas, yeah.
The bodegas have loose eggs.
Like ever.
So,
they used to have bugle pouch tobacco. I think they still have that. My father used to roll his own cigarettes sometimes, because things were bad back then, you know. And there was white margarine, and you had to take the color. They sold the color in a different packet.
Oh.
And when you got it home, my mother used to tell me, "Okay, mix up the margarine," and you mixed it up so it looked like butter. You know?
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay. We went to the 1939 World's Fair in Flushing Meadows, and
you mean 69?
1939 World's Fair, before World War II.
Oh.
And Johnny was in the agriculture exhibit with my mother, and it seemed like a cow or something coughed in his eye,
Yeah.
and he got an inflammation or something. And my mother tried to sue. I don't know how she was complaining. Nothing ever came of it, and he got well, so nothing happened.
I never heard of that story.
Huh?
I never heard of that story.
Neither did
There's a
I.
lot of stuff.
I
we
heard
never
it.
of.
Yeah.
I got it all written down.
But the
Yeah.
family- the family never spoke about that. I never heard of that
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
You heard that, Blondie? Yeah?
You heard that, Lonnie?
Mhm.
Even she heard it. How come I never heard it? You heard that, Steve?
No, she was sworn to,
His wife heard it. He had diphtheria.
oh, yeah?
Wow.
Wow.
Well, those are the things that I remember, some of the things that I remember growing up in New York, which were very cherished memories for me.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the guys that I grew up with, in fact, my best friend was Joe Whaley.
Uncle Joe.
Yeah, and I remember him. I can't. Yeah. He was my best friend.
Mm.
And the rest of the guys that I grew up with, none of them left. The last one that I remember that passed away was a guy named James Tempero. He just passed away last month.
Oh.
He was about a year and a half older than me. And he was a hero fireman. In fact, they had a spread on him on New York 1
Yeah,
when the day he died. Did you see that?
I didn't see it.
No.
Okay. They had a spread on him on New York 1 because he was a hero, and they replayed his story.
Mm.
And I had spoken to him maybe a year ago because we kept in touch. We always kept in touch. But he's the last one I know of of the old guys that I grew up with.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
He's the last one.
What's his last name?
Tempro, Tempro. As a matter of fact, his son was a teacher, and his son, I saw Jeopardy, part of a segment of Jeopardy
Mm.
a couple of years back, and there was a contestant on there named Tempro. I says, I wonder if that's Tempro's son. And sure enough, that was his son. I found out that
Wow.
was his son talking to him. He says, yeah, that was my son. Yeah, wow.
Hmm. Wow.
Who did you teach in South Carolina?
Who did I? Oh, when I did my practice teaching, before I graduated, I taught. Jesse Jackson was in my class.
Mm.
When I did practice work, and he's just one of the kids in the class. He was like, they considered him like a big man on campus because he was a football player, football star.
He was your contemporary, right? I mean, it was.
He wasn't my
He was
contemporary.
younger than you.
Jesse was younger.
He was younger.
Yeah, he was in like junior high school.
Mm.
And he was friends with the Evans family.
The Evans family knew he knew Helen Evans
Helen.
because she was in his class.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And he's passed on now, right, Jesse Jackson? Or
No,
is he
he's
No,
still
he's
alive.
still alive.
He's still alive.
He's sickly, but he's alive.
Yeah.
And also,
Parkinson's, I think, right?
didn't what's the woman's name? Shirley Chisholm. Tell us about
Shirley
your experience
Chisholm-
with her.
Shirley Chisholm was my sister's
Mm-hmm.
classmate, or not only if she was a classmate, but they both went to Brooklyn College.
Mm-hmm.
And Shirley Chisholm and my sister were in this organization
Mm-hmm.
known as IPOTHEA.
Say it again, please.
IPOTHEA.
Mhm.
It was a Greek, supposedly, organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a stepping stone into Zeta Phi Beta.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because my sister was Zeta Phi Beta. Did you know that?
I did, and Nana told me that Shirley Chisholm would come to your house.
Shirley Chisholm used to come to our house
Mm-hmm.
for meetings in my mother's basement.
Mm-hmm. And what were the meetings about? Was it the Zeta meetings?
They could have been Zeta, I don't know what they were,
Mhm.
but I used to see them down there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
He wouldn't get involved.
And, what was the other thing I wanted to ask you? Didn't you work for one of the mayors?
Yeah.
Didn't you have a relationship with one of the mayors in New York?
I worked for the mayor's office at one, as my, part of my job, as a supervisor of, all of the youth workers in Bedford-Stuyvesant, I had an office on Bedford Avenue and Fulton Street above the bank.
Mm-hmm,
And, when there were problems in Bed-Stuy, those riots and stuff like that, gang fights and whatnot, Mayor Lindsay
mm-hmm.
came to my office, and he sat in my chair. He got at my desk and sat in my chair.
He
Uh-huh.
took over.
And I wanted to get a picture of that. He took a picture with me,
Mm-hmm.
and that photographer would never show me, would never give me a copy of that picture.
Mm.
I
No?
wanted that picture.
Mm.
He never gave it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was on, I worked with a guy named Jim Smith. He was the commissioner, one of the deputy commissioners of personnel for New York City.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he's the one that got Eunice a job
Mm.
in the Department of Investigations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was beholden to him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a Republican, so when he ran for Congress against the guy after Shirley Chisholm retired.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy running for her spot. So Jim Smith, who was a Republican, was running as a Republican for her spot.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to help him.
Mm.
I had to become a Republican in
Mm.
order to help him,
Okay.
which I did. I owed him. You
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but he was a good guy. I really liked him.
Not the same kind of Republicans we have today.
No.
Facts. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
they
had
were
like
different
like
type of.
Jazz
Right, moderate,
and
yeah.
Rockefeller
Yeah.
and
Right,
all those
Right.
people.
Yeah. He was
Mhm.
he was a Rockefeller Republican.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were more moderate,
Right.
to say the least.
You know, as a matter of fact, it was Rockefeller and Lindsay that got minorities involved in opening up jobs. Like, you never saw a black subway motorman.
Right.
You never saw that.
Mm.
But then you started to see it,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
These guys started getting these jobs.
Yeah.
They weren't locked out.
Mm-hmm.
In all types of civil service, you know, jobs. So they were good. They were good. State and local.
Mm-hmm.
State and city.
And Uncle Vernon, what could you tell us about the Korean War?
I wasn't in the Korean War, you know, myself, but I was in during the
Mm-hmm.
Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I was stationed aboard the USS Coral Sea. I went to.
And where was that at?
I was stationed. It was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay.
And when I went aboard as a aviation bosun's mate, which I was trained to do catapults and arresting gear,
Mm-hmm.
which I did in California when I was out in California. So when I went aboard the Coral Sea, I knew that I wasn't going to get that job.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to be one of those guys that was going to be pushing planes around different, spotting them in different places.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the training officer, and I told him I had 2 years of college, and I was always interested in aerology, weather.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, "Oh, you are." He says, "Okay." He looked up my record and everything. He saw that I had 2 years of college. He said, "Okay, I'll talk to the aerological officer and see what he's got to say." So he talked to him. He said, "Okay, send him up." So I went all the way up to the island where the office was. And he says, "Oh, you like to be in the aerological business?" I said, "Yes, sir." He was a lieutenant commander. So he says, "Okay." And they accepted me.
Mm.
And I got the job.
That's
And I
wonderful.
got OJT, on the job training,
Mhm.
you know.
Was that
For the rest of the
unusual
time.
for that
Yeah,
time?
it was unusual.
Yeah?
It was unusual. And the guys that used to push planes around looked at me and said, "How did you get that job?" You know, they wondered, "How did you get there?" I said, I asked for it. You know? Yeah, and that was it.
Because I mean, Truman had integrated the armed forces
Yeah.
in the late 40s.
Yeah.
And so by then, by the time you were on, I wonder if it was starting to filter down a little more now. That
Let me
people
tell you
were-
something. I ran into those guys that were in World War II, those old chief petty officers
Mhm.
that went through the war. And when I was in boot camp, they were picking people out to do different things, what school they were going to go to. And they said to me, "You know, we got a good job for you." I said, "Oh, what?" He says, "Well, how would you like to become a steward's mate? And all you have to do is clean up the officers' mess and clean up the cabins after they leave, and then you're through for the whole day. You can just relax." I said, "That's not what I got came into the Navy for."
Mhm.
Then they said to me, "How would you like to be a hospital corpsman?"
Mhm.
And when you saw all the lists of the guys who were killed in the Korean War, all you saw were hospital corpsmen all over the place.
Mm.
Mhm.
I said, "No, I don't think so. I came here to become an aviation. I came here to be in aviation."
Mhm.
So they backed
Mhm.
down. They said, "Okay, we'll put you in aviation." So they sent me to aviation school here in Jacksonville, Florida.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
that's how
really?
I got-
Jacksonville?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's how I got started in aviation. They had an airman prep school here in Jacksonville. So I was here for a while.
Mhm.
And then they shipped me out to California.
Mhm.
So that's how I spent my time in the Navy.
Can you tell us about that colored sign, the story behind that?
I was just about to ask that. I swear.
Oh, that sign that I have.
Mhm.
Because
That's
one
it.
day, as you pause, and one day Vernon said, "I'm going to show you something, Tony." And he went in the back, came out with this thing, and I was like, "Wow." But the
Yeah.
story is very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not saying a word.
That's legendary. That's
Oh yeah.
When I was on Liberty, when I was a short timer, I was about to be discharged. I had about 3 months to go, and they put me aboard an old ship called the USS Mississippi. It had been in World War II, and it had been kamikaze bombed and everything, and a lot of people got killed. A lot of guys got killed on that ship. But anyway, they were using it to go out along the Capes, Carolina Capes, to shoot down drones with missiles. And then it would come back on the weekends, and you go on Liberty. Anyway, we went on Liberty one day. I was going with this guy who was going to Georgia, and he had a car, so I went along with him. I drove with him, and
It's Kathy.
Oh.
It's Cat.
and as we came down through, we hit South Carolina. I forget the town that we were in. I forget the town that we hit. And we got to this place and we stopped to go to the bathroom and to get a sandwich or something. And he was white. And so he went to the white part. And I went, and the guy told me, "You have to go around to the back." So I went around to the back, used the bathroom back there. I saw this colored sign. So I came back out and I looked around, I didn't see anybody. And I had my little Navy jackknife on me that has a screwdriver in, and I said, I took that sign down, and stuck it in my belt, and put my blouse over it, and got it back in the car. And I didn't tell them about it until we were about 10 miles away. See what I got? He almost died.
Yeah.
But that's how I got that sign. I still have it.
Do you remember where he was from?
He was from Georgia somewhere.
Oh, he was.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. She added to it
Oh, thank you.
with a little room.
As a matter of fact, your grandmother asked him to come in and have a cup of coffee or something.
Did he?
Yeah, he was scared to death.
Of what?
It was during the time of segregation, you just didn't do that.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
so it was just one of those things.
You could have paid the price for pulling that sign down.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And
I-
I think of all the people that didn't know where to go to use their bathroom.
Right.
If
Well, they
got-
found out.
Yeah.
Well, they figured it out quickly.
Yeah.
For some reason, I got the story confused. And I thought it was a time when we were leaving Beaufort
Oh, that's a different story.
to go visit,
Your grandmother.
yeah.
That's another
So
story.
Vernon did it a couple of
You
times.
took another sign?
He has a pattern.
Story.
That's a
This
serial
is a different story.
Yeah.
Kathy was an infant.
Yeah.
We were coming, we were driving.
She was a baby.
She was a baby, and we were driving that 53 Chevy Bel Air from Beaufort, South Carolina to Greenville, South Carolina. And we were going north on that road, and Kathy was out of milk. And I said, oh, we gotta get her some milk. And I stopped at one place, and the guy says, oh, we don't sell milk here. He says, I'll tell you what, you go up about a mile up the road, you'll see a diner up there, they'll sell you some milk. I said, oh, okay. I didn't think anything of it. I went up to, stopped at the diner. I walked in with Kathy's bottle, and that guy jumped up, and he jumped out of the back and came, he had a gun with him. He said, you so-and-so, you get the hell out of here. I said, well, I just came to get my baby some milk, you know. He said, get out of here. And then the waitress says, no, wait a minute. I'll get him some milk, you know. And he was just livid. He just didn't want me in there. So she was nice enough to get me some milk. And I gave, you know, I paid whatever I had to pay. And that was it. I got out of there and drove off.
And she lost her job.
I don't know
How
what
long
happened.
did
She
she
was
find a
nice
wife?
though.
I don't know.
Yeah, she lost her job.
I'll tell you, I had some times on that road. I used to hitchhike, you know. I used to hitchhike. I was hitchhiking from Greenville to the back to the base in Norfolk, Virginia, and I was in the dark out there on the highway, and a family picked me up in one of these vans, and they said, you know, it's pretty dark out here. I don't think you're gonna get picked up. You better come with us, and we'll put you on, you know, put you on the highway, and put you on the right highway so you can get a ride. She says, in the meantime, you can come with us, and you must be hungry. And they were a church family, you know. This is a white family, you know, mother, father, kids, everything. So I went with them. They took me home, and they fed me, and they, you know, gave me dinner and everything. And they took me back out, put me back out on the road where I could get picked up. And I said, thank you. And that was it.
Weren't you afraid of animals out there? in the dark?
You were more afraid of the people than you
Yeah.
were of
Right.
animals.
Before the animals.
Animals
Yeah.
don't carry
But you
guns.
know,
Yeah,
that was
true.
a time when you would find sailors and airmen and soldiers out on the road, hitchhiking. Guys were hitchhiking during that time.
Yeah.
Trying to get back home.
And people get picked up.
Yeah, that was during the war, during the Korean War. And guys were hitchhiking.
Yeah.
It wasn't unusual.
Okay.
Uncle Vernon,
Yeah.
could you tell us about Nana? And I think she was trying to get in some Broadway play, but she got pregnant, and
Oh, I don't know about that.
it was it a, I don't know who wrote the play. It was some famous playwright. I don't know if it was.
She might have told you that story.
Yeah, Gotti,
No,
gotta
you
share that
you
one.
know that story. You know, because you talked about it, and I think she got pregnant with my dad, and so she wasn't able to take the role or something like that. You remember
I
that?
remember when your father was born,
Okay.
but I don't remember her losing a role.
Apparently, there was some playwright that wrote a play or something, and she was going to be cast in it, and I don't know. It was some actress, Lena Horne, or somebody who got the role instead because she got pregnant Does that ring a bell to you?
I don't know. There might have been something like that.
That's what Daddy told me.
But you do remember Johnny being born, and what did you tell me?
Yeah, I remember Johnny being born. I was saying, what is
And
that?
now-
What is that? This red thing that I see.
He's taking up space.
They're paying so much attention to it, you know. So what is this?
And where was Anthony in all of this?
Anthony,
Was gone already?
No, Anthony was a rebel.
Was he?
He was a rebel, yeah.
He would have been around 15, right?
Yeah, Anthony liked to make money.
Mm-hmm.
He liked to make money. Wherever he'd go, wherever he could make money. He used to go to there used to be a ferry going across from 125th Street over to Jersey. And he would be there. He taught me one day how to do that. He would open the cab doors for people getting into cabs from the ferry or going to the ferry.
Right.
He'd open the cab doors, and he'd get a couple of cents or a nickel or something like that, and until they chase you.
And didn't he teach you how to ride a bike?
Yeah, he taught me how to. In fact, Anthony gave me my first bike.
Yeah,
He gave me my first bike.
you and my dad.
He was a good brother. Anthony was really.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony wanted to be my father sometimes, I thought,
Mm-hmm.
Because he was the oldest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony was 6 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was something.
And did you know very much about Anthony's childhood performing years?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That was all in England.
Right.
So I didn't know too much about that, except that he was with some group. I think the leader of that group they called him Jackie Hooray.
Jackie Hooray?
Yeah. Jackie Hooray. I don't know who he was. I'm just.
Was it like a Little
Was that in
Rascals?
England?
It was that was the Little Rascals or something like that. Our Gang or
Yeah.
And he played like a buckwheat character or something
Yeah.
like that. Mm-hmm.
Nana told me about that.
They
Yeah.
had a
I tried to
group that
send
were
this to
similar
you.
to that.
Yeah,
in
you saw
England
that?
Right.
At the
You
time.
saw the picture that I sent you?
He
I
was
didn't-
the group.
You didn't see this one?
No.
Right, but
I was trying to send
and
this
then
to
they
you.
had it similar in the U.S.
Because I got it online.
All right, send it to me again.
And it looks just like Marissa. I don't know if there's Uncle Anthony.
Yeah. Where'd you get these pictures?
Online, when I look
Kathy
on
does a lot.
Ancestry.com,
Kat does a lot
I
of
think it
research.
Oh.
On Facebook, Kathy?
No,
was. On Ancestry.
Let's see that.
This one, where did I don't know where I
That's
got that
Anthony.
from.
Somebody was
Kathy, can I
looking
see
at
that
Ancestry.
for the camera?
Any more?
Well, that's Nana, that's something Stevie gave me or something.
Yeah, I have that.
Yeah, that picture of Nana.
Nana had a picture of him in like buckwheat character. I don't know where
I
that
never
picture.
saw that.
I don't
Or
know
if
where that
did,
picture
I
is.
don't remember.
Probably
So
his
you
sons
gave
had
Somebody
it.
giving you that.
Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
His sons had it. I think
Oh,
I
here's a
saw
picture
something
of
one
Pops,
time.
wait.
Mm-hmm. I
Oh,
know
really?
it.
Down
Uh
the
huh.
line.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This
I remember that too,
I was
Yvette.
trying to send this
Just
to
a
you
little
a long
bit,
time ago, and it was on Ancestry, and there's.
Oh, wow. Anthony Francois Sylvester.
And it's like an immigration.
Yeah.
This is
Oh,
like a
I-
census.
I did see that. Who sent that
I
to
sent
me?
that to you.
You sent that to me?
Yeah. I was trying to send it, but when you send it to someone, it gets blurry. So it's a
Yeah.
close-up picture.
Yeah,
Blurry.
that's him.
Kathy, let me see that real quick because I'm
Yeah.
about to stop this because I guess
Oh,
we're
okay.
done.
Vernon, that was a very nice overview. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Now that is
Very
Pops?
nice.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's Pops.
Oh.
You know, it's funny because some.
And do you have one of
things
Uncle
that you
Anthony?
took, like, we're,
And this,
We're
in fact, this was the
25
whole
years
thing of, let
younger
me see,
than
how
you.
it this way.
but a lot of the things you talk
And that's the-
about in New York
Declaration of Intention.
Mm-hmm.
overlapped. Like,
Mm.
we can even I can remember when.
And what is that, an immigration paper?
Yeah,
And
it has his name.
Please send it to me.
Anthony Francois. And I don't know if it'll come out clear when I send it.
Okay.
So when it says his address,
Yeah, the bus